and welcome. Today I'm going to be using this Filled with Fun stamp set and matching dies from Stampin' Up to make a greeting card, and I'm going to show you a couple really quick, easy ways that you can customize the dies and stamps that come with a set just to give it a little bit different look. So this is going to be an A2 size card, which means it's going to be 4 1/4 inches wide by 5 1/2 inches tall. So I am going to be using just a plain piece of white cardstock to mount everything on, and then I'll mount that onto my card base. And on top of that white piece, my background piece is going to be this Juniper from Concord 9th. This is 1/4 inch smaller in all directions, so it's 5 1/4 by 4 inches wide. And then I know that my wagon with those flowers are going to be the main focal piece, but I wanted a place for that to sit on my card. So what I did was I decided to use these nesting dies from the Unity Stamp Company. With this set, every other die is scalloped and then every other one is just straight edge. So I used the largest die and I cut out this piece of pebble cardstock from Concord 9th. Inside this piece of pebble, I knew that I wanted it to kind of look like a little bit of a scene for that wagon to sit on. So what I did was I took that next die down and I found some pattern paper that I liked. This is just kind of a teal and white check. And I also took some green because I wanted that to look like grass. I knew that neither one of these had to fill that whole circle, so I just laid my die partially onto it over halfway so that they'll overlap a little bit. And I ran that through my die cut machine to get just kind of a half circle or a little bit larger than half circle. That'll act kind of like my sky. And then I did the same thing with the green. I just overlapped partially, ran it through my die cut machine, and ended up with again, just kind of a partial circle. So that'll be my pieces for my little scene. The next thing that I'm gonna do just to customize this a little further is I have this die from Lawn Fawn that looks like blades of grass. I am gonna just position that kind of at the top of my green piece, you know, just down from that edge so I don't miss anything. I'm gonna use some low tack tape to just tape that in place and run that through my die cut machine. Okay, so this is what that piece looks like after I've cut the edge with that grass blade die. I'm going to do a couple other things just to customize this background. After I get this all glued together, I am going to trim this very edge off because I wanted the circle kind of coming off the edge of the card just to give it a little bit of interest. And if I had it centered, that big wagon with flowers would have covered all of that up. So I thought if I kind of offset it a little bit, I can have the wagon to the side and still show a little bit of that kind of background base piece. I am also going to stamp my sentiment onto this Juniper piece of cardstock and then run it through the back through my die cut and embossing machine with this embossing folder that has kind of big dots. They kind of look like bubbles. So I'll do that next. Okay, and to stamp that sentiment, I am going to use my Misty stamping tool just because I might have to stamp it more than once to get a really nice impression. So I took my piece of Juniper cardstock and I put it securely into this bottom corner of the Misty, and I used the magnet to hold that in place. I'm going to scoot this over so you can see I do have my Hello stamp right here, and I wanted to stamp right in kind of that top corner. So I am going to be using this VersaFine Onyx Black ink. That's my favorite ink to use for a sentiment. It gets nice and crisp. Give it a few taps and close the lid, press it, and I'm going to stamp it one more time. Good, that looks like a nice crisp impression. Okay, now that my stamping is done, I am going to let that dry just a little bit so that it doesn't kind of rub off onto my embossing folder. But what I'll do is I'll take this Stampin' Up embossing folder and I'm going to put my cardstock inside of it. It's kind of like a sandwich. And I love that they have this little line at the bottom because I like to just line my cardstock up with that just so I know I have it straight. I kind of also look at the dots on either side to make sure they're hanging off the cardstock about the same amount. Not that it has to be perfect and precise, but that's just something that I do. And then I'm going to run this through my die cut and embossing machine. All right, so this is what that piece of cardstock looks like after I've run it through with the embossing folder. It has a really fun kind of bubbly looking texture. That's going to be layered right over the top of that white piece of cardstock for the background. And then I did go ahead and glue these two pieces of paper onto this pebble circle. And like I said, that's going to kind of hang off the edge here. I'm going to go ahead and give that a trim. Okay, so I thought I would show you how I'm gonna just trim this main focal piece down to go onto my card. I know that I want it hanging off this left side, so I want to trim this the left side of the circle off. So I'm going to actually turn it upside down, just so that for me that's going to be easier to get this lined up how I want. On my trimmer, each one of these squares is 1/4 inch, and I'm going to cut about 1 inch off of this. So I'm going to go over 4 squares and line that little scallop piece up. This isn't scientific, so it's just kind of approximate. And then I want my grass to be, you know, somewhat straight, somewhat parallel with what I would think the ground is. So I'm going to kind of give it a little wiggle to get it straight to my eyes. And then I'm going to close the bar here. I'm going to hold it really well with my left hand, and then with the cutting blade I'm actually going to kind of press on it as I'm bringing it down, and I'm going to run it back and forth a few times just to really make sure that I've gotten through all those layers. And then you can see that just trims that side off with a nice straight edge, and it can go right on to my card and just look like it's kind of going right off the edge. And before I move on to my focal piece for this card, I'm going to go ahead and get my layers put together just so the glue can start drying. So I'm going to take this embossed piece and add some glue. There's a lot of nooks and crannies in this, so I'm really gonna try to get plenty on there to make sure it doesn't pop off my card base. And try to get that centered the best that I can. Okay, and I'm gonna put this straight on. I'm not going to pop any of this up. And I'm going to line this up with that juniper edge, not the white edge. So just kind of right up to there, give it a press. And then if you have something heavy, it's nice to lay on there and just let everything adhere down. I'm going to use this really big acrylic block, put that on there and let it just rest for a little bit off to the side. Okay, I'm going to build my little wooden wagon next, and I wanted it to kind of look like weathered wood. I'm going to show you here. These are the dies that come with the set. So there's kind of the main body of the wagon, and I cut that out in this cobblestone. It's probably a little hard to see on this background, but it's called cobblestone cardstock from Concord and 9th, and you can see I have my cobblestone ink out that matches. I'm going to be doing a little bit of shading with that. And then there's this piece that kind of looks like one of those little wooden fences that might be along the side of a wagon, and I cut that out in that same pebble cardstock that I used for the main portion of the card. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of shading on this just to make it look a little bit more like weathered wood. Then there's one main wheel piece, so I cut that out twice, just out of black cardstock. And then this little piece here that has the 2 circles, those are the inside of the wheels. I cut that out of cobblestone as well, and then I just punched the little inside piece out. It has some notches. I'm not sure if you're supposed to kind of punch those out, but I just used a little paper punch and cut those out. And then those will layer right on top of the black for that little wheel. And the last piece here is the wagon handle, kind of this little L shape, and I cut that out of this black cardstock. So we'll start assembling these pieces. Let me get these dies out of the way. All right, so I'm bringing in my little multi-purpose mat so I can do some inking and not mess up my table. And I'm actually going to be kind of inking everything with this cobblestone just to give it a little bit darker shade. So with this being kind of that foam type of pad, and I'm going to use just a bit blending brush. This one is from Simon Says Stamp. I'm not going to rub the ink pad because I don't want to tear it. If it were more of kind of that fabric felt, if it was more of a felt surface, you can rub it on there, but this is not. So I'm going to kind of do a little bit of tapping just to pick up some ink. And then I don't want to go straight onto my cardstock, and I already touched it right here with my finger. It made a little bit of a smudge. It's going to be fine, but I don't want to go straight on there because it'll just leave a big splotch. So I like to start by kind of doing little circles off to the side. That'll rub off a little bit of that ink that I can then go back and pick up again later. just try to zoom in a little bit here. Okay, and then kind of slowly start making my way onto this piece. So remember, this is cobblestone ink and cobblestone cardstock. Just start making my way onto the edge, and just with it being a small piece, I'm gonna just kind of turn. I am getting it probably onto my fingers, which I'm okay with. My fingers will wash. And this is just gonna give it a little bit of depth, a little bit of shadowing. You totally don't have to do this. This is optional. But I like to take my die cut pieces and just add a little color like this, just for a little bit different look. And I'm okay with that because I know my middle part is going to be covered up. I'm going to actually take my little wooden piece. Now these typically, these two little sections in between the two boards would pop out as well, but I left them in there for now because you'll see in just a minute I'm going to actually cut all this apart. Grab a little bit more ink and kind of start making my way on. Just light hand, small little circles. Okay, and we'll stop there. Get this out of the way so I don't get ink all over everything. And then just to really customize this is one of the things I was talking about, just taking pieces that are in a set and customizing them however, you know, just so they look a little bit different, you know, do something different with it, a little bit out of the box. I was having kind of a hard time deciding how I wanted this to sit and layer, and I'm not sure how the manufacturer necessarily intended for it to be, but I really wanted this to look like a little wooden wagon with kind of that weathered gray wood. And I thought, okay, if I take these two boards and try to put them on here, I want this to look like maybe like the metal frame that's holding, you know, going around the outside holding these boards together. So I decided to snip these apart. So don't be afraid to cut apart your dies. I'm just gonna kind of snip on that line. Make sure I'm getting in there. And then you can already see this die cut out because it's supposed to pop out by itself. And then just cut, there's kind of 3 attachment areas that hold the two boards together basically. And I'm just gonna snip those. Try to make a nice straight line. So now I have one board. And then I'll just go back and trim these away from the other side. Okay. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and get these glued on. And with these being a little bit skinny, I'm gonna grab them with my reverse tweezers just to help me hold. It's kind of like having an extra hand. Bit of glue on there. I'll have this one be my top board, and what I want to do is just bring it down slightly from the very top. Again, I want that to kind of look like it's a, I don't know, like a metal frame that goes all the way around the wagon that kind of holds these boards, you know, the support for the boards that are around the outsides. So there's one, and glue to my second piece. And I want this just kind of butted right up against that first one. Give it a good press now that my, okay. And there's the little body of my wagon. And then I'll go ahead and get these little wheels glued together and get those mounted on, and then I'm going to show you what I did a little bit different with the handle. Okay, so when you die cut the handle out, it does, you know, each of these pieces kind of has a little bit of a bevel. So you can kind of look at it and I guess know that this should be the top and this should be the bottom. Just it's hard to see on the camera, but you know, that's the way that the die was built. The blade is on that side, so when you cut it, it's like this. So typically it should be facing this way. Well, for the design of my card, I knew that I wanted my wagon actually going the other direction, so I simply just turned it over. I'm kind of giving it a little bit of a press, not that that really even matters. You don't even have to do that, but I just wanted to show that you don't have to use it exactly like it was designed. If it works better to flip it around the other way, you can just flip it, because this is one of those pieces that really doesn't have a correct side, I guess. So I'm gonna just place that right where I think it would be coming out on a wagon. And I hold it with my tweezers just to give it a little second to dry. I'm gonna take this mat out of the way now that I have my gluing done, and let that glue dry just a little bit. Okay, and now for kind of the star of the show is these cute little flowers that are going to be in the back of my wagon. I kind of had this vision that I wanted my wagon just overfilled, like overflowing with flowers. So I thought, I wonder what would happen if I stamp this. This is the flower stamp out of that set. What would happen if I stamped it 3 times and layered it? So I did use my Memento Tuxedo black ink with that stamp, and that was because I want to use some alcohol markers. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I really like these Spectrumnoir tri-blend. I do use other alcohol markers as well, but these are just kind of my favorites right now. So as always, I like to grab the light shade that's in these markers. Again, this is the yellow-green blend, and I'm gonna just do a layer of light. Just real quick. This doesn't have to be complicated, just kind of a real quick layer over anything that's green. And then my next step is I'm going to take the dark and add a little bit of dark shading in just a few spots, just to give it a little depth and dimension. It doesn't have to be specific. It certainly isn't, there's no rules that it has to be a certain way. And then what I'm going to use for the center of each flower is this gold brown blend, and I chose that because I wanted this whole thing just to look a little bit more kind of vintagey. So instead of a really bright yellow for the centers, I kind of grabbed this one that's a little more dull. Again, I'm going to just go over the centers of each really quick with the light, and then I'll grab the dark and kind of just lay that down where I think the shadow or some shading would maybe be. And that's that. And then I'm going to do a combination of 3 different markers: the Jade green blend, the green turquoise blend, and the aqua blue blend. And I'm just going to pick a couple flowers for each color just to give it some variety. I didn't want them all to be one color. Of course, they certainly could be, but again, I like to use the lightest shade. Just go over the surface. And then go to dark. So I'm going to go ahead and color the other two kind of the same way. I want to pick different flowers for different colors, so I have a little bit of variety, and then I'll show you how I further chose to customize this stamp for my card design. Okay, so these are all colored now, and I'm going to grab the matching die. This is the die that comes in the set, and go ahead and cut all three of these out with my die cutting machine, and then show you how that looks. All right, so I ran all three of these through my die cut machine, and this is what we're left with, some cute little flowers. So my thinking was, like I said, I really wanted this wagon just to be really full of flowers. So at first I was wondering, you know, what would happen if I just kind of start layering these one layer behind the next. And I thought, well, that's cute, but it's very uniform. I mean, all of these flowers are really in a row, straight up and down. And even if I tried shifting them back and forth, it just wasn't quite the look I was going for. So I thought, you know, I want less of this white space showing behind. I want them to be a little bit more random. So what I chose to do is to just cut each one of these. So here's where you can further customize your stamp set. To me, I can see a little bit of a gap right here, and then another one right here. So I am just going to take my little scissors and quickly, and I hate fussy cutting, so don't get me wrong, this isn't, you know, I don't love cutting things out, but this was pretty quick and easy. So I cut those two apart, and then I want to get rid of some of this white space. Just kind of the best I can, nothing has to be specific. And I'm also going to just do a little cut right there, just in case this gets close to the edge of my arrangement, that little white chunk won't stick out. And then again, like I said, there's this little bit of a, I'm getting off the screen here, there's this little bit of a gap right here, so I'm gonna just run my little scissors right up through there. I'm gonna leave that like that and just trim a little off there. So I'm left with 3 different pieces from that one row of flowers, and I'm going to do that with these other 2 as well. All right, so pretty quick and easy. I got those all cut apart. As you can see, I now have 9 chunks of flowers instead of just those 3, and that's really going to give me the opportunity to kind of customize this the way I want. So I can start filling my wagon with those cute little flowers, and I can do some overlapping and just kind of tucking behind to really fill out that bouquet. Okay, I've let my glue dry, so all my little flowers are in place in that way. And I'm going to put that onto my card with some dimensionals. I did want to pop this up just a little bit to give it some interest. You can see all my layers of paper in the back, and these dimensionals will just kind of help give it a little bit of added support. So put onto our little scene here. Just kind of eyeballing it. I want to get it somewhat centered between the 2 edges. it doesn't have to be exact, but all right. And then I want to add just a few little embellishments and then we'll be done. All right, and last but not least, I have just a couple things I want to do for embellishments. I took a little bit of twine and kind of tied it into like a bow knot kind of a thing. I am going to just stick that right on the handle of my wagon. So I'm just putting a dot of glue right there and press that down a little bit. And then I have these, they're called Dewdrops embellishments from Honeybee Designs. I just love how they kind of look like a drop of water. And I'm going to be putting several of those on my card. So I'm going to add some glue first in the places that I want my embellishments. And then I just pick up that little dewdrop and drop it right onto that dot of glue. So that is the finished card. I thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this gave you some ideas and inspiration of different ways that you can use some of your stamps and die sets, maybe in ways that you haven't really thought of. Kind of think outside the box a little bit, use them how they maybe weren't necessarily intended, so that you can get your own custom look. I would appreciate it if you liked this video, if you'd give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing and clicking that bell notification so that you don't miss any of my future videos that I post. I thank you so much again and have a great rest of your day.